My name is Zach Burden, I'm 32, and I live in Pittsburgh. I've been working in marketing since I was 22, mostly in agencies. Changed a couple of jobs, nothing remarkable. A year and a half ago, I joined a firm called Holloway & Finch. It felt like a step up, better salary, bigger clients, a downtown office. At the time, I thought I'd finally found a stable, decent job. Everything seemed fine at first. I got standard onboarding, was assigned to a small project, and introduced to the team. The crew was typical. One introvert, two chatty folks, one perpetually tired designer, and the project manager, Paula. She seemed reasonable. But the one who stood out immediately was Michael Rowe, our direct supervisor. Michael was sort of a legend in the company. He'd been there since the early days, worked his way up from analyst to department head. Around the office, people said he was tough but fair, though I quickly realized that wasn't exactly true. During the first few weeks, he barely acknowledged me, acted like he didn't know my name, gave short answers, avoided eye contact. Then came the small comments, stuff like, "This isn't college, don't overthink it," and "Try to act like a grown-up next time." I initially brushed it off as part of his personality, figured I just hadn't found my rhythm yet. But it got worse. He started regularly criticizing my reports, not in private but during team meetings. "Zach decided to wow us all with another Excel epic," he said once when I submitted a campaign analysis. People laughed, not meanly, more awkwardly, but it still stung. A month in, he began taking credit for my ideas. I suggested launching a new segmentation strategy for our client database. He called it nonsense, and a week later pitched the exact same idea as his own during a meeting with the director. I was sitting right there. I wanted to speak up, but couldn't. To everyone else, I was just the new guy. I tried talking to him directly. Stayed after a planning session one day and asked if I could get more constructive feedback. He nodded and said, "Be grateful I even talked to you." After that, he started giving me more and more routine tasks that weren't part of my role, spreadsheets, double-checking other people's data, compiling reports that no one even opened. I went to our. They told me, Michael has his own management style, and that I needed to adjust. I tried again 2 weeks later after he called my presentation pretentious garbage in front of everyone. HR took notes, nodded, and nothing changed. My schedule became unbearable. Michael often set Monday morning deadlines and sent the tasks Friday night. When I asked if we could discuss timing, he said, "If you want to stay here long, don't ask those kinds of questions." I started working nights. My sleep got worse. I began having stomach pains. I was drinking 5 or 6 cups of coffee a day just to stay afloat. The team kept their distance. A few people said, "Don't take it personally, he's like that with everyone." But that didn't help. I felt my confidence slipping. Each morning got harder. I'd open my laptop and just sit there, feeling like everything I did was pointless. A couple times I caught myself thinking I wished I could break a leg, just to get medical leave. At first, my wife was supportive. She said it was temporary, that I'd get through it. Later, she got frustrated. Said I was constantly on edge, that I wasn't really present at home. I didn't know how to explain it wasn't about her. It was just that every day felt like a stress test, and by the evening I had nothing left. The worst moment came during our monthly department meeting. I'd prepared a report on a test campaign I'd managed. The day before, Michael emailed me saying I'd be presenting it. I was nervous, stayed up late getting everything ready. When I started speaking, he cut me off on the 3rd slide and said, "Now we'll all hear how the budget went down the drain." The laughter was louder this time. I just stood there with the clicker, unsure whether to continue or leave. After the meeting, I sat alone in a conference room for 15 minutes, staring at the table. No real thoughts, just heaviness. I walked out, sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and just stared at my inbox. It was just past noon. I knew I had to finish a report, send a client presentation, reply to some requests. But I couldn't move. The idea of quitting had been in my head more and more. I'd browsed job sites, even drafted a resignation email to HR, but hadn't sent it. Something kept me from pulling the trigger. Maybe fear, maybe some leftover hope that things would change. Or maybe just habit. The next day, I came back to work. I knew I couldn't last much longer here, but for now, I was still holding on. 3 months had passed since that meeting. I stayed at the company, though there wasn't a single day I didn't regret it. Every night I told myself I was quitting. Every morning I went back to the office. My wife kept asking me to make a decision, said I couldn't keep living like this. I knew she was right, but I couldn't bring myself to act. I almost stopped sleeping. I'd fall asleep with difficulty and wake up around 5 or 6 in the morning, anxious, unable to go back to sleep. Some nights I just lay there in the dark, listening to her breathing next to me, thinking about what the next day would bring. Sometimes I'd go to the kitchen and sit with a glass of water. Conversations with Michael ran through my head, arguments that never happened, comebacks I never said. The panic attacks came out of nowhere. The first one hit on the subway to work. At first, I thought I was having heart trouble. My chest tightened, hands got clammy, breathing became shallow. I got off at the next station and sat on a bench. After about 20 minutes, it passed. I didn't understand what it was at the time. Later, I realized my mind was breaking down. At work, people avoided me. Some stopped talking to me altogether. Others kept their distance. I didn't blame them. No one wants to be close to the guy who's always getting hammered. Everyone was afraid of being next. I could see it in their eyes. One evening, I stayed late to finish a report on a new campaign. The next day, Michael emailed me. Looks like you've decided to play director. Interesting. Let's discuss. And we did, in front of everyone. At an all-hands meeting, where internal initiatives were being reviewed, he suddenly pulled out a printout. I knew immediately it was my document, the one I had sent only to him. He started reading aloud. Quote, I suggest reallocating the budget across segments and running split tests on a cold audience. Anyone understand what he's talking about? He asked, waving the page. Someone snickered. Michael went on, Zach, you're our strategist. Care to explain why you think your opinion matters? I said I didn't think it was appropriate to discuss internal correspondence in front of the whole team. He shrugged and added, if you ever said anything useful, I'd discuss it privately. I didn't respond. I just sat there silently. Something inside me gave out. I didn't feel angry or hurt, just empty. After the meeting, I went back to my desk, closed my laptop, and left. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. That evening, I couldn't speak. I sat at the table, eating mechanically. My wife watched me, waiting. Then she asked, have you decided? I nodded, told her I'd resign tomorrow. She didn't smile, but I think she felt some relief. The next morning, I came in early. Wrote my resignation letter, sent it to HR and CC'd Michael. He didn't respond. Half an hour later, I got an email from HR. Sorry to hear you're leaving. Best of luck. I packed up my stuff. Everything fit in one bag. A few pens, headphones, a notebook, phone charger. I left quietly, like I'd never worked there. At home, I didn't feel relief or happiness. I thought it would feel better when it was over. But it didn't. It felt like something had been stolen. Not my stuff, but something internal. I still woke up to an alarm, even though I could sleep in. I'd wake up and just stare at the ceiling, feeling like something was unfinished. I tried to tell myself I'd done the right thing. That I couldn't stay. That they were wrong. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Michael had won. He was still there, getting bonuses, building his career. I just walked away. Sometimes I checked the company website, looked at updates, job postings. His name was still there. Still listed as department head. No consequences. No sign that anyone noticed how he acted. My wife said it would pass. That I just needed to rest, then find something new. I nodded, said I would. But inside, I still felt erased. No explanation, no protection, no consequences for the people who caused harm. 2 weeks passed. I still hadn't found another job. I applied to a couple of places, but half-heartedly. I felt useless. Sometimes I thought maybe I shouldn't have quit. Sometimes I thought I should have quit sooner. But most of the time, I just sat in silence, not knowing what to do next. After I quit, I decided not to rush into another full-time job. My wife talked to our accountant and figured out a way to stretch her income and my savings for a while. I started picking up small freelance gigs, mostly ad campaign setups and media planning. The money wasn't great, but I had more free time. That was both a blessing and a problem. At first, I just slept in. Went to bed at 2 a.m., woke up at 10. Then I started jogging in the mornings. After a couple of weeks, I felt physically better. But the mental tension didn't go away. Moments of relief would be followed by a sense of emptiness. I kept thinking about Michael. Sometimes I pictured him still pushing people around, sitting in meetings, getting bonuses. The thought that he got away with everything really bothered me. One night I was scrolling through Reddit. In a subreddit about toxic workplaces, someone mentioned a manager covering up budget manipulations at a well-known Pittsburgh marketing company. I didn't pay much attention at first, but the username looked familiar. I checked the profile and found older posts, from a year ago, also about the same company. The details were vague, but it was clear the person knew what they were talking about. They mentioned fake tenders, weird reports, paper-only projects. It all sounded familiar. I started thinking back to what I had seen myself. There were projects that never launched but were marked complete on paper. Reports with copy-pasted data, like someone just reused the same spreadsheet. Back then, I thought it was carelessness or people being in a rush. Now it looked different. I dug through my old folders and found backups of emails, presentations, work docs. Nothing confidential, just leftovers from when I left. I started going through them. One email had Michael asking not to include real links in a report, just make it look active, he wrote. Another had him suggesting to adjust the numbers to match the final total. At the time, it seemed odd, but I was too busy to question it. I created a spreadsheet and started logging everything. Client names, amounts, dates, overlaps. A few times I thought I was just forcing patterns. But then I started seeing it clearly. Same vendors, identical amounts, no confirmation that anything was actually delivered. Budgets spent with no real output. Some projects just sat in the system with no updates, yet were marked as complete in reports. It happened most often in Q3, right before financial reviews. I remembered another detail. Last year, our accountant David left suddenly, even though he had a solid reputation. They said it was health-related. Now I wondered if he just didn't want to be part of the scheme. Maybe he was the one posting on Reddit. At first, I didn't know what to do. I spent a few days collecting documents, taking screenshots, saving backups. Then I looked up where I could report something like this. I found the IRS and SEC websites, both had anonymous complaint forms. You could upload files, describe your concerns. It didn't guarantee action, but there wasn't much else I could do. I spent 2 evenings putting everything together. First in Russian, then translated it to English. I attached my spreadsheet, a few PDFs, an archive of emails. In the form, I wrote that I was a former employee and suspected fraud and financial misreporting in the company. I didn't sign it, made a new email address and sent everything, first to the IRS, then to the SEC. After sending, I felt a strange mix of anxiety and adrenaline. My heart was racing, hands were sweaty. I knew I'd done something important. Not just out of revenge, though I can't say that wasn't part of it, but because I wanted someone to look into it. I wanted all that I went through to mean something. For a few days, I couldn't calm down. I checked news sites, searched the company's name. Nothing. Eventually, I forced myself to close the tabs and focus on work. I started taking on more freelance jobs just to stay busy. Sometimes I'd freeze when the phone rang, expecting a call from an unknown number. But no one called. I didn't tell my wife everything. I said I'd filed a complaint, but left out the details. She asked if I was afraid of consequences. I shrugged. I hadn't broken any laws. I just passed on information. What happened next wasn't my responsibility. A week passed, then 2, then 3. Life went on, but something inside me stayed tense. Not fear, more like waiting. Like something had to happen. A little over 4 months had passed since I filed the complaints. During that time, life slowly settled. Freelance work was going well, not perfect, but I was starting to feel confident again. I was waking up with an alarm, organizing my hours, and even set up a basic home office in the storage room. It wasn't ideal, but I felt like I was in control again. My wife and I were arguing less. In the evenings, we watched shows together, sometimes went out. I tried not to think about the past. Still, sometimes fragments came back. Michael's voice, his phrases, his face when he laughed in meetings. I pushed those thoughts away. I told myself I'd done what I could, and it was over. I'd quit, put a period on it. That lasted until Kevin called. He was one of the few former coworkers I still talked to. We weren't close, just stayed in touch. The call came in the middle of a weekday. I had just finished a client call and was getting ready to go out for coffee. "Did you hear the news?" he asked, skipping any greeting. "The tax authorities are at the office. Since this morning, they came with warrants, checking everything, servers, documents, even personal laptops." I froze. "What's going on?" I asked. "Michael's been removed." Walked out in front of everyone. The office went dead quiet. Then chaos started. Someone from accounting was crying. A few people got suspended pending the investigation. I didn't respond right away. He was talking calmly, without emotion, like he still didn't grasp how serious it all was. "What are they looking for exactly?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. "Word is, financial misconduct. Fake vendors, phantom campaigns. We all thought it was just budget strategy. Turns out it's serious." I thanked him and ended the call. Then I just sat in the kitchen, staring out the window. My head was empty. I didn't feel happy or scared, just tense, like right before a storm. I opened LinkedIn out of habit, and saw the first posts. People writing about an unexpected audit, leadership changes, someone hinting at a process reevaluation. No one named Michael directly, but it was obvious. A few days later, a local business site posted a short article. It mentioned Holloway and Finch, a tax audit, an anonymous insider, and possible SEC filings. No names. A week later, another article followed, this one more specific. A preliminary investigation is underway involving one of the company's former executives. Again, no names, but I knew. Then came the messages. Colleagues sending me screenshots of HR emails, rumors flying around. Michael's account's frozen, he's selling his house. Someone said they saw his things being carried out of the office. Another person claimed his wife had filed for divorce. Then I got a message from someone in accounting, short and blunt. Michael's father passed away. Don't know if it's related, but it's bad. I wasn't searching for any of this. The information came to me. At first, I was just curious. Then it got heavy. Every new detail added pressure. It wasn't satisfying. It was like watching a building collapse, one you used to live in. I told no one it was because of me. Not my wife, not friends, not the people who messaged. She knew I'd filed a complaint, but assumed nothing had come of it. I never corrected her. I didn't want attention. I didn't know how to talk about what I felt. It wasn't how I pictured it. Sometimes I thought, what if I'd stayed quiet? If I hadn't seen that Reddit post? If I hadn't gone digging through old documents? Life would have gone on as before. Michael at the helm, the company running. Me freelancing, on the outside. But I wouldn't have been able to forget. I wouldn't have lived comfortably knowing what I knew and having done nothing. I didn't feel like I made a mistake. But I didn't feel proud either. I just felt tired, hollow. I couldn't tell where justice ended and revenge began. I didn't know what side I was on anymore. A month passed. The media stopped talking about it. The company did some restructuring, downsized departments. Michael vanished from LinkedIn. His profile was deleted. The rest seemed to be trying to forget. Some still messaged me, carefully, vaguely. I replied briefly. I didn't want to discuss it. What I needed to happen had already happened. But at night, I still woke up sometimes. Not from fear, just like that. I'd stare at the ceiling and wonder where Michael was. What he was doing, if he understood what had happened. If he knew why. I didn't know, and maybe I never would. 6 months had passed. Life had settled into a stable, almost predictable rhythm. After several months of freelancing, I accepted an offer from a small digital agency in a quiet part of the city. The team was small, 10 people, including the office manager. Workflows were transparent, tasks distributed evenly, no shouting, no overnight deadlines, no, redo this by morning. Everyone just did their job. No drama. They brought me on board without much fuss. During the interview, Karen, the head of the department, didn't ask why I left my previous job. She just said, I care more about how you work than where you've been. I remember being caught off guard by how simple and fair that sounded. After my first full day, I walked out of the office and realized I hadn't tensed up once. I just worked. That was new. A couple of weeks later, I started sleeping well. No more dreams about meetings, yelling, or failed presentations. I woke up without anxiety. I drank coffee because I enjoyed it, not because I needed it to function. On weekends, I could lay on the couch and read without the looming dread of Monday. For the first time in a long while, I felt in control of my time, my thoughts, and my mood. I went back to the gym. Nothing intense, just to feel alive again. I started going 3 times a week. Swimming, light cardio, some weights. No goals, just motion. My relationship with my wife improved. We stopped arguing over nothing. We laughed more. I actually listened when she told me about her day, not distracted by some internal panic. On weekends, we'd drive out of the city, drink coffee on patios, talk about plans. It felt real again, simple but real. The past was still there, but it didn't grip me anymore. I could remember things. Michael standing with a printout of my email, HR telling me, that's just his style, me walking out of the office with an empty bag, and not feel hurt. It was like looking at an old photo. You know it's you remember it clearly, but it doesn't sting anymore. I didn't look up Holloway and Finch. I didn't check their website or read news about them. LinkedIn became just another platform. Former coworkers rarely messaged me. A few thanked me privately, then disappeared. I didn't mind. Everyone has their own way of moving on. One evening, just as I was about to close my laptop, a message came through. It was from Laura, a former colleague I'd worked with on 1 or 2 projects. We weren't friends, but we'd stayed connected. Her message was short. Heard Michael moved to Canada. After everything that happened, no one wanted to hire him. He tried going through connections, but nothing worked out. Eventually, he just left. I stared at the screen for a moment. Then I typed, interesting. I hope he found what he was looking for. She didn't reply. I closed the tab, poured myself a glass of water, and stepped out onto the balcony. It was quiet. The apartment was warm, neighbors' windows glowing in the evening, people walking outside. Everything felt still. That was the last I ever heard about Michael. No more news, no mentions from others. Sometimes, scrolling through social media or browsing client profiles, I'd freeze for a second. A face that looked familiar, a gesture that reminded me of him. But it was never him. And each time, I felt less. There was no sense of triumph. No guilt, either. Everything that had happened, I accepted as part of my story. It had hard chapters, but they were over. I'd done what I thought was right and moved on. I wasn't a hero, not a crusader, just someone who couldn't take it anymore and made a choice. Sometimes I wondered what he felt now. If he had any sense of justice or injustice. If he remembered my name. If he suspected it was me. But mostly, I let those thoughts go. They didn't change anything. He was out of my life, and I was out of his. My wife asked me once if I still thought about it. I told her no, and that was almost true. Thoughts still came. Briefly, like flashes, and then disappeared. I didn't dig up old emails. I didn't open old files. I had a new life now. One without fear, without anger, without needing to prove anything. One day, walking home from work, I ran into an old colleague. We greeted each other, exchanged a few words. He said, "You look better than you used to." I thanked him. I didn't ask about Michael. I didn't want to know. On the way home, I thought maybe that was the whole point. Not who left, but who stayed. I didn't win, I just held on, and that was enough.